Bruce Leuchter, the CEO of Neurvati Neurosciences and Therapeutics. We're a New York-based biotech company funded by Blackstone Life Sciences, and we're developing a small molecule therapeutic called Radiprodil as a therapeutic candidate to treat a rare pediatric neurodevelopmental disorder called GRIN-Related Neurodevelopmental Disorder. And this is a genetically defined developmental epileptic encephalopathy. We know the etiology of the disease or the cause of the disease, and we aim to target that cause as opposed to focusing on carving out symptoms from the disease. Our goal is to treat the whole disease. And we do that by targeting the receptor that is a product of a mutation on the GRIN genes. And when patients have what we call a gain of function mutation, more activity, you have more activity at that receptor, and we go in and down-regulate activity with a negative allosteric modulator. And we've had data that has been quite compelling, showing a pretty remarkable effect on seizure frequency decrease in these patients, but also showing impact on non-seizure symptoms. If I step back and I think about the broader space, which is often referred to as developmental epileptic encephalopathies. And this is a group of disorders which impact children, babies and toddlers and children and adolescents, and of course adults if they live into adulthood, which comprises dozens and dozens of different genetically defined diseases. So diseases that are caused specifically by genetic mutations. And historically in this space, this DEE space, as we call it, patients were treated clinically. What they presented with to the doctor was dictated their treatment. So if they presented with seizures, they got a seizure drug. If they presented with behavioral difficulties, they were perhaps tried on a drug that could manage behavior, and so on and so forth. So it was really symptomatically driven historically. Over the last 10 years or so, we've made such good progress in specifically elucidating and understanding the genetic drivers of these diseases and the underlying biology of these diseases that it now gives us a chance to target specifically the disease as opposed to going in and just trying to treat the clinical symptoms and calling it a DEE. Now we start with the clinical suspicion that a patient may be suffering from a DEE, but then we go figure out what DEE it is. So that we can apply the best possible treatment. That is a difference. And part of that difference is being driven by us at GRIN Therapeutics. But it's not just us. There are other companies in the space who've taken a similar approach in this next wave of innovation, which goes specifically after the underlying cause of the disease in order to have broader effect beyond just certain symptoms. And that's in essence what we're aiming to do. And as I mentioned earlier, our data that we were able to generate and present late last year indicates that we are on the right track. And we've now come through regulatory discussions and are entering into our phase 3 study in the middle of this year. So these patients, these GRIN-related neurodevelopmental disorder patients, have mutations on the GRIN genes, the GRIN1, GRIN2A, GRIN2B, and GRIN2D genes. These are the genes that encode for a receptor in the brain called the NMDA receptor. And this is a receptor that's been studied and pursued by drug developers and basic researchers for a number of years, very well understood biology, but never has it been developed in a developmental epileptic encephalopathy. Never has this target been pursued in GRIN-related NDD or other developmental epileptic encephalopathies. And so what Radiprodil does is it targets that receptor. So just to rehearse again, the mutation is on the gene that encodes for the receptor. When the mutation creates more activity at the receptor, we're able to go in with Radiprodil and downregulate that activity. So it's an NMDA NR2B negative allosteric modulator, which means that it modulates the receptor, doesn't turn it on, turn it off. It's a more elegant approach to downregulating activity at the receptor. And given how important this receptor and this biology is to the human brain, it's really important to manage it elegantly, which is what we do with Radiprodil. Well, breakthrough therapy designation is a dedicated regulatory path that companies can submit applications for based on data that they've generated in their clinical development work to date. And in essence, if granted breakthrough therapy designation, it provides the company, the drug developers, with an opportunity to engage FDA in a more dedicated cadence with senior managers that exist at FDA that are part of the decision-making process, and it allows for more collaboration. So when you're granted this designation, breakthrough therapy designation, your ability to interact, iterate, collaborate with FDA goes up simply because of the meeting cadence and the way in which you can engage them, which isn't available to those who don't have that designation. It's a commentary on how compelling the clinical data is. So breakthrough therapy designation isn't granted on simply scientific principles with a compelling mechanism of action targeting an unmet need. It's delivered designated because of really compelling data that's been generated in that indication by that sponsor, by that company. So when we submitted our application for breakthrough therapy designation, we did it on the back of our phase 1b honeycomb data in GRIN-related neurodevelopmental disorder. And because the seizure frequency decrease was so profound in this phase 1b study, we were granted breakthrough therapy designation for seizures in GRIN-related neurodevelopmental disorder. Interestingly and notably, the data that we hope to generate in the phase 3 study will, of course, focus on seizure frequency decrease as a primary outcome measure, but will be very focused on impact on non-seizure symptoms. And we've got a design that allows us to assess that across multiple different endpoints. What we aim to deliver at the end of our phase 3 program is not just significant improvement in seizure frequency, as we proved out in the phase 1b honeycomb study, but also impact on the broader disease. And if we can do that, we'll have done something quite unique in the developmental epileptic encephalopathy, or DEE space, insofar as we'll be able to bring a product to market that is treating the totality of the disease, not just the symptoms. Well, as you can imagine, these regulatory strategies and timing considerations are all sensitive topics. But what I can tell you is that we've emerged from our regulatory discussions with a path for us to initiate our phase 3 study about mid this year. And the phase 3 protocol looks quite similar in many ways to our phase 1b protocol. So we have 2 cohorts of patients, those who have qualifying seizures, 4 or more seizures a month or 1 a week. Those patients become eligible to enroll in our seizure cohort, where we'll aim to enroll about 40 patients. And in the non-seizure cohort, these are patients who don't have 4 or more seizures a month or 1 a week, but do have pretty significant and morbid non-seizure symptoms. And those folks are entered into the non-seizure cohort. And both of those cohorts together will progress over the coming quarters as we enroll in parallel. There's a 1-to-1 randomization process in both cohorts. So 1-to-1 randomization in the seizure cohort for Radiprodil or placebo, and a 1-to-1 randomization in the non-seizure cohort for Radiprodil or placebo. And those studies will enroll, and we'll aim to deliver data as soon as we possibly can. It is always a product of how quickly you can enroll patients. We feel quite good about the relationships we've been able to develop with the patient advocacy organizations, with PIs, with KOLs. And the awareness that has now increased in the wake of our phase 1b data is obviously quite helpful. And we'll look to leverage that as we go out and try to recruit patients. But we're confident with our ability to do that and feeling good about all the ongoing collaborations we have, which should facilitate that. Well, I would say, having come out of Rare Disease Day just last week, it's a topic that's obviously top of mind for all of us who spend time in the rare disease space. And there's no better representation of a rare disease with unmet need than this broader category of DEEs, and even more specifically, GRIN-related neurodevelopmental disorder, a significant amount of unmet need. So as I reflect on last week's Rare Disease Day, I can tell you that the motivation, energy, purposefulness that we have here at GRIN Therapeutics around our phase 3 program and the other programs that we have in development in TSC and FCD couldn't be any higher. We feel purpose-driven, and we're really excited to be in this position heading into phase 3 development.